Today's reading from Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. Mrs. Jennings, an American lady of the International Peace League, asked Sri Ramana about the spread of peace in the world. Sri Ramana replied that if one gains the peace of the self, it will spread itself without any effort on the part of the individual. When one is not oneself peaceful, how can that one spread peace in the world? The lady asked if it was not true that in the East there is a scientific approach to the realization of the self. The Maharshi replied, "You are already the self. No elaborate science is necessary to establish it." And she said, "I understand the general truth of it, but there must be a practical method for it, which I call science." The Maharshi said, "The cessation of such thoughts is the realization of the self. One does not see the world or one's own body being away from the self. Always being the self, one sees everything else. God and the world are all in the heart. See the seer, and everything will be found to be the self. Change your outlook. Look within. Find the self, who is the substratum of the subject and the object. Find it, and all problems are resolved." Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Welcome to Satsang. You are that which is aware. You are the self. Being, consciousness, bliss, life eternal, unborn, undying, the Absolute. You are the self. These are the words that the sages traditionally use to point to remind us that we are already here. We are already awake. We are unbound and liberated. This has been the declaration in one form or another of the sages for 5 millennia. But these aren't just words, are they? When the sages are speaking, they're speaking from their direct experience. So throughout your day, every day, when you're in the waking state, you can ask yourself, is this my experience? that I am unborn, undying, awake, Sat Chitananda, being, consciousness, and bliss. And of course, at different times, our answer is going to be different. Sometimes we're going to go, phew, no, I'm so far from that realization, that recognition. And at other times, we won't even need to ask the question, because we'll be so present in the moment, and we will know that we are aware in that moment, and we'll be experiencing a self-recognition that we are the light of consciousness. This comes for everyone at different times, but we don't always recognize it. We more typically recognize, oh no, I'm nowhere near that. I'm nowhere near the declaration of the sages. So the question rises then, if I'm not there now, what do I need to do? What do I need to know in order to come closer to this recognition of myself as being, as presence, as the self? And so here I talk about some simple ways in which we can remember, return to, recollect, whatever word you want to use for what you do, to this pristine awareness, this recognition I am. And of course I say things like, ask yourself, are you aware? Are you here? If you're here and you are aware, then you can't be caught somewhere in your past. The past doesn't exist if you're here. Fully here. Not here with your thoughts of the past, but fully here in what is in this moment. So are you aware? You can ask yourself this. Sometimes the mind will answer, yeah, sure, I'm aware. Sort of push this question aside. And in these moments, it can be really helpful to ask yourself, what am I aware of? What am I identifying with in this moment? Even now, as you sit here, ask yourself, what are you identifying with? Especially if you don't feel yourself to be the supreme, self-aware consciousness. It's not an indication that you're failing. It's an indication that your attention is somewhere else. Where is it? Are you the body? The mind, the thoughts, the emotions, the relationships? Are you your gender, your job, your family status? What are the things which you identify with? This question, what am I identifying with, you can ask yourself any time of the day. You don't need to be in formal meditation. This can be helpful because your mind can stay more easily focused on what you're inquiring into. But you can do this throughout your day. With people, without people, whether you're still or you're busy. If you take a moment to ask yourself and reflect, what am I identified with? You'll get the opportunity to see the ways in which your conditioning blocks your recognition that you are that which is aware, awake, Sometimes it'll be a big deal, right, that's blocking it. There'll be some chaos going on in your life, somewhere. And you will forget in that moment that you are awake. But this forgetting does not eliminate your awakeness. It just veils it. So become gentler with yourself. When you have forgotten, I am that which is here, now, aware, awake. Be gentle. Eventually, whatever it is that's troubling you in the moment will pass. Whether it takes a moment or a week, it will pass. Your task, by asking yourself, what am I identified with, is to know those things in your own experience, in your own mind, which hook you into the belief that you are not awake. This is the reason to ask this question, or any question. Am I aware? Am I here? What am I identifying with? You ask this question not because you're failing, but because you are determined to remain as being, consciousness, and bliss. That you are persisting in laying this foundation for yourself as awareness, no matter how many times you forget it. That's the need for kindness. For most of us, there will be a forgetting quite often, in the beginning especially. But some of you already know that if you challenge this forgetting, you immediately come back to the presence of your own being. You have to. Asking the question, what am I identifying with, is not looking for an answer. It's recognizing, oh, yes, I'm aware, I am identifying with something other than consciousness itself. Something other than the heart of being, the open heart, which I know I am. So as soon as you ask any question, such as this, at any moment, on your cushion, fixing dinner, at your job, walking down the street, as soon as this recollection comes to mind, you are immediately back in the here now. You are putting down the past, putting down your concern or worry for the future, and recognizing that you are that moment of awareness. And it's out of this recognition that you can become firm, knowing I am that which is aware. And as you do this more and more, it becomes less important to you what you are aware of, less important to you what you might be identifying with in any given moment. Because you know that as soon as you ask the question, what am I identifying with, or am I aware, you know that immediately your experience is, yes, I am aware. And I am not that which I'm identifying with momentarily. And you come back to what is. Back to this recognition of the sages when they say, you are that which is aware. Unborn, undying, unbound, liberated and free. I am that. And for some of you, this will take some persistence. But as you persist, you begin to relax more and more into the state of pristine awareness. So while it takes persistence, it doesn't take a huge effort. It's not like moving a mountain. It's more like remembering to take the next step. Sometimes we can get caught up in our efforting, trying to understand, trying to make something happen. When we're doing this, we have to remember, yes, this is forgetting that I am already that. I am already free. And we come back gently to here, to now. Remind yourself to take a breath, to relax. What you're seeking, what you're searching for, is already here. You're just looking past it. So just breathe. So what Sri Ramana was pointing out to this woman in this passage from the book this morning, from the reading, is what I've just explained to you. He was saying to her, don't let your thoughts blind you. See what is here. This is what I'm encouraging you to do. Notice when it's difficult for you, even in this moment, just to remain here with me. Is your mind slipping away somewhere? If it is, just know that this is the conditioning that I'm talking about when I say ask yourself the question, what are you identifying with? It's very useful to notice we come someplace like Satsang, and through the help and the support of others here, we're able to have momentary glimpses of what it means to be here now, to be here in our own I am presence. But we might also find ourselves to be unstable in that recognition. You noticing that? So just give some recognition, some understanding to what it is to where it is your thoughts go. Maybe to a pain in your body, to something you were thinking about before you came here, to something you have to do after, to some difficulty you're having with someone in your life, to some difficulty you're having with your body, your health. And just know that each time you pull yourself back from that thinking, that emoting, and so on, into the presence of your own being, no matter what's in the field of awareness, whether you're at satsang, or you're out on the street, or you're home somewhere, or you're at work, no matter where the attention goes, you are not that. And you're not bound by that where the attention goes. Not by thoughts, not by experiences, not by circumstances. And that as soon as you come back to the here now, to the recognition I am, you free yourself, even if it's just for a moment. You have freed yourself from whatever difficulty or problem you feel you are experiencing now. And as you come to satsang, and you develop this, you cultivate this, if you will, as a practice during the waking state and the rest of your life, you slowly begin to firm up your foundation for remaining as awareness. What does it mean to remain as awareness? To remain as awareness means you possess the ability to be in whatever circumstances you find yourself, in whatever emotional state you find yourself, in whatever mental state you find yourself. Without the reactivity of conditioning. Over time, as you ask yourself the question, am I aware? What is aware? Who am I? What am I identifying with? As you inquire in this way, you develop a stability in your ability to simply witness what is in any given moment. You come to satsang to cultivate this ability. But eventually, you can go anywhere. Whatever the circumstances are, you will remain as presence, open, loving, kind, even in difficult circumstances. But this is not simply a psychological process. That's just what we do to get ourselves to the place where we can deeply ask the question, who am I? And what is aware here? So that we can turn from the objects in the world, in awareness, in consciousness, back to the source, this I am. This I am is what we experience as the first mental recognition, which comes when the light of consciousness shines itself into the world. The very first recognition that arises is I am, or even just I. So what we're doing with inquiry is we're turning back toward the source. What is the source? The source is the light of being, the light of consciousness, awareness itself. This is the reason we undertake the practice, and along the way, we shed a lot of our psychological baggage through the question, what is it I'm identifying with? Am I aware? What is aware? Who am I? All of these forms of the inquiry. We just keep turning back toward the source. And the source is the light of being, that which you are. This is true rest, freedom, liberation. And this recognition that you are that frees you. From everything that you thought that you were, and liberates you into knowing what you are. So is there anything that you need to have clarified? You want to talk about?
How to increase without decreasing from oneself. Other people.
How to increase what?
The source. There is no such thing, right? Is there?
There has to be a source.
Well, I mean a source.
You are here, right?
The I Ching speaks of to increase, but not to decrease from oneself.
This is all happening with mind. That's not to invalidate anything you're saying. But just understand that this whole business of increasing and decreasing, this is mind. It is true that it's mind's attempt to explain something which has some depth to it, right? So it's not just a surface how's your day, how's the weather? It is looking. Someone has looked deeply to be asking this kind of question, right? So this is very good. These questions, they persist in all of us. This is what keeps us seeking. But I'm always encouraging you not to put one thought over and against another, one emotion over and against another, one person over and against another. This is the way of duality. This is the way of can say eternal suffering. Right? And the reason is not that these aren't very good thoughts, the I Ching and so on. These are of a higher level thinking than other thoughts. But nonetheless, we have to recognize at some point that all concepts, all thinking, is not going to take us to the place of awakening. Awakening is not the business of the mind. The business of the mind is to figure out things, try to make concepts that itself can understand, and then to express those concepts in words. So this is what all the great sages have done. This is what all the great teachers have done. This is what the I Ching is doing. It's looking at the experience of one or more people and saying, how can we put this in a way that others that are coming behind us can follow? So this is its value. Creates a pathway for others to follow. And all the sages have done this, all the teachings have done this. This is the basis of everything in the spiritual realm, the teachings which are there. But ultimately, we have to come to understand that we have to drop all of this consideration. We have to stop trying to find the mind, using the mind, trying to transcend the mind by using the mind, right? This isn't going to work. The mind is inherently limited. That's why it's said that all thoughts veil consciousness, awareness itself. They cover it over. And this is why I say we have to come back to this primary thought, which is I, or I am. We have to ask this question, who is this I? What am I identifying with? To keep coming back to this question. Everything else is going to keep us in the realm of experience, in the realm of mind, in the realm of concept. It's only by coming back to ask the question, what am I identifying with? Who am I? And then waiting there in the silence, right? Because this question in some way, the question, what am I identifying with, can be answered. We can look into our conditioning. We can say, oh yes, I'm identifying with this concept or that concept, with this experience, that experience, with this emotion or that emotion. So we can say, yes, in this case I'm identifying with something. But if we ask, who am I? Once we realize that we can't find I in the body, we can't find I in the mind, we can't find I located anywhere in the emotions unless we identify with them, we can ask the question, who am I? Now we recognize the only thing that can follow this question is a silent looking, a silent witnessing. What is here? This I experience is the source of everything else. You can accept that. This I experience is the source of everything else. Now you can ask the question, who am I? And keep quiet, remain silent. What happens when we do this is the mind that's asking the question, how can I do this without increasing or decreasing myself or someone else? This question just subsides. Why? because the attention can't hold on to that question at the same time that it looks toward the silence of being. It just can't do it. You may have noticed this in your own mind. You can really only think about one thing at a time. And if you start to think about something else, or something else outside you, a sound, right, an experience begins to take your attention, the attention just moves from what you were thinking about to that new object, right? And you immediately forget what you were thinking about. So this is a conscious way of doing that, of noticing that the mind does that. It shifts attention from one thing to another. Well, now, when you're having a difficulty in your own mind, in your own emotion, in your own life, you take up the process of shifting attention consciously back to the I. The way Ramana describes this is you move attention back toward the source. The source being the thought I. Now you ask the question, and who is this I? And you wait. The interesting thing is that attention then relaxes and just waits there in the stillness. In the beginning, it waits just for a moment. But over time, it waits longer and longer, allowing what is just to be here. So now, where before you were having thoughts about this, that, this concept, that concept, thinking about this, thinking about that, trying to figure it out, now you become aware in the suchness of this moment, of the sound of cicadas. Maybe the breeze moving through the room, the weight of your own body. This is what is here now. So, stay with that. Not with the sound of cicadas and the weight of your own body, just with the silence of waiting. What we're doing when we do this is we're creating an opportunity for that which we are, which is pure spirit. Some would say pure love, pure consciousness, to flood our own being in such a way that we begin to see, I'm that. So can you see now that nothing is increased or decreased?
Yeah. Just need to wait. In silence.
Yes. But also you can use the question, what am I identifying with, to get you there. The reason that we sometimes have to do this is because by the time we realize we need to ask the question, what am I identifying with? The identification with whatever the thought process was, whatever the emotive process was, is already quite strong, right? This is the moment in which someone might say, oh, but I can't escape from this thought, it's just driving me crazy. So now the question, what are you identified with? And the realization you're identified with thoughts, emotion, experiences, the past, projections into the future. When you see this very clearly, it becomes very easy to just drop it by comparison, because you're not wrapped up in it, right? Just asking the question, what is aware of this? What is identified with this? Who am I? Creates that little bit of space so that whatever we were chewing on so intensely, we're able to direct the attention elsewhere. away from it. Now that tangledness that comes from looking at both sides of a duality situation, increase and decrease as an example, thinking and not thinking. Oh, I'm thinking and I wish I wasn't. It's like that bouncing back and forth from one side of the duality to the other, which is the constant habit of conditioned mind. We are able to pull back from that. Now we're able to even witness as the mind goes, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
So you say there's a shift in awareness, then you can wait.
Then you can wait. So this recognition of inquiry is about knowing that what we're always doing is returning to what's already here, which is the awareness that the duality is there and it's happening in the mind and it's going back and forth, or in the emotions. Gives us some space, pulls us back from it. In effect, it says, let's just put the question of increase and decrease aside for a moment, right? And say, and now what is here? So we remove ourselves from the tangle of the mind. Clearer?
Much. Thank you.
It's nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Haven't seen you here before. What's your name?
My name is Christine.
Christine? Have you been here before?
No.
I didn't think so. What's your name?
Samarpan.
Samarpan. Welcome. How are you today? Yeah.
Tired. But good.
The mind is tired.
The body's tired.
Body's tired. You? Good. The last time that we talked, I think you had some back and forth going on. Have things settled for you?
Oh no, they've gotten much worse. But I disconnected from it. Yeah.
So if you say you disconnected from it, does that mean that you just allowed it to be what it is? Or does it mean that you pushed it away?
No, you described it really well just minutes ago.
Okay.
I quieted down enough that I could see. I was kind of addicted to certain thoughts. It was a looping
Correct.
thing, and it was uncomfortable. And I could see that what I was doing, rather than making space and letting it go to reach some comfort, I was kind of reaching into it, bringing it on. It makes sense if I told you the whole story, but
Yeah, don't.
Yeah. It was very nice to, stuck in it for a while. It was pretty intense. And just a little different look in there is all it took to make some space.
Yeah.
And then it just was not compelling anymore.
Yes, very good.
Compelling.
This is very good. Yeah, did you hear what he just said? That when he made some space for it, it wasn't so compelling.
Yeah.
This is what we just were talking with Colleen about. Withdraw attention. Put attention where it actually can do some good, which is into the recognition that you are aware, that you are here now, that what is what is, however you frame it. And what happens is, now there's no energy for it, so eventually it has to go. What we do over time with this kind of orientation, we develop the skill to just keep letting go more quickly. And the reason actually is out of our own experience. It's not out of a concept, it's out of our own experience that the more quickly we don't cling, the more quickly we let go, the less we suffer. This is what we're all about as human beings. Not less suffering, more happiness. Yes? But when we get in the habit of picking up our suffering and running with it all the time, we lose sight of the fact that we are happiness itself. Love, compassion, kindness, that these are our foundations. So the more we're able to just keep letting go, the more we're able to experience ourselves as happiness, freedom, liberation. Beautiful. Yeah, well done. And notice I didn't say, it won't ever arise again for you. It won't ever arise again for you. Okay? For some, it will never arise again. But the experience of most is that this is a gradual process, that it takes a bit to become comfortable with not clinging. And the reason it takes a bit is because the mind is conditioned by what we've been doing up till this moment. So this is the first time you've heard of this? Well, maybe it's going to have to be your practice for a bit. You can finish it completely in any given moment and know that you have always been that freedom, always been that liberation, and you will laugh over the 30 years you spent coming to realize that. You will know you were never that. Then that was the illusion. But as long as it persists in you, then you persist with this recognition that you are free, aware, awake, happiness itself. No matter what your mind and your conditioning are saying to the contrary. Do you have something sweet?
I do, but I'm not entirely sure what it is.
Then stop seeking it.
That might be it. That might be what it is.
Sometimes we just have a feeling of unease or dis-ease in some way, and then the problem becomes that we're seeking for an answer, we're looking for it. Because, the mind is very powerful, it's going to oblige. But if we can acknowledge, I'm just not sure, I'm just unsettled right now, I just don't feel completely comfortable, and stand still in it, then we don't feed the energy. So sometimes this is the best solution. Stop looking.
It's challenging.
Oh, that's the problem. See, mind just identified
My
it.
mind wants to look.
Yes, mind just identified it. You see, mind can make problems out of empty space also. Maybe you've noticed. And this is why our attention becomes like a swinging door, because when our attention is going out and it's looking for what the problem is, our practice is swing back into the space. And even when we swing back into the space, we may still sit there and cry. We may still sit there feeling fear. We may still sit there in some other form of the not knowing. But we won't feed it with delusion, with illusion. We'll simply know, I am sad. I am fearful. And every time we do this, we gain, and by not reacting to it, right? The reaction being, what is this? I have to know. And then searching around and finding something that may or may not be true about what's actually going on, using the mind. We're able more and more to come back to this place of not knowing. And in the place of not knowing, it becomes much more possible for us to not cling, to not grasp. Not to say, this is fear and I have to get rid of it. This is sadness, this is pain, and I have to get rid of it. Rather to say, this is what is here now, and I am not this. I am what is aware of this. This is our practice.
I think my mind, when it can't identify what it is, even though it's disease is a good word, that's when I can get really involved in it.
Yes.
I don't know what this is. I need to know what this is in order to not identify with it.
Yes, absolutely.
And then it becomes confusing.
But understand, this is a form of conditioning. And this comes from just being a human and being a child, and as soon as you start going to school at 5, someone starts asking you, what's the answer? Right? Well, no one says to you, oh, that's okay, you don't know the answer, just hang out there. Until now. So then this becomes a new possibility for you. Oh, you don't know the answer? Oh, good. Stay there. Right? This is the opposite of 20 years of education saying, what's the answer? So just understand that this is uncomfortable, but this is just a natural consequence of conditioning. Can you be here now in this difficulty? Yes. You are here now, right? The difficulty is here, but that doesn't mean you aren't here. So put attention on your being here, not on what the imaginary difficulty is. If there's a very real difficulty of some sort, you'll find out soon enough. Don't go looking for it. Yes, and remember to breathe, right? We talked about this a lot last week. One of the things that happens with fear, with uncertainty, with not knowing, is that we catch our breath. We stop breathing, and we don't even notice it. And so one of the best ways not to cling, and I won't go through the whole grasping again, but one of the best ways not to cling and to grasp is to remember to keep breathing. That you can sit here, you can be here in this difficulty, what I call stand in it. You can stand in it fully, without clinging, just by breathing, relaxing, acknowledging that you are in fear, you're in difficulty, you're in sadness, you're in pain of some sort, and just breathing. Because the one thing we can be sure of is if it has a beginning, in other words, it hasn't been here forever, right? This is momentary, right? It came at some point. If it had a beginning, it will have an end. Our task is just to be here as we are until things take their natural course. We do this by things like, I use the concepts of not clinging, not grasping, standing in it. This process also, because it's a process, one day comes to an end. When it comes to an end, now you're free. So first we begin with the little things, the fear, the not knowing, the sadness. We stand in it until it goes. Eventually we come to stand in everything as it is. Then freedom can come. Of course, I know the difficult part can be when you're trying to stand in it and the tears are running and you're sitting in a room full of people. That can be a challenge. But again, no clinging, not knowing. Sit firm in the uncertainty.
I'm getting better at that.
I know, it's a huge change since we first met, huh? Yeah, it's very good. Yeah. Please have some prasad if you'd like.
I have to ask about gluten.
No gluten.
Thank you.
There is sugar, however.
I've noticed with the not knowing, you mentioned freedom that comes with that. And another word would be liberation.
Yes.
For me.
Yes.
Back to
Yes.
and whatever the mind is working on, being open to or not. I may do this or not.
Yes. This provides a sense of freedom, liberation.
There's nothing to do.
There's nothing to do, yes. Yeah, there's never anything to do, and sometimes things happen. It's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of a paradox. You see, it's not that there isn't anything ever to do or that there aren't things that happen. It's that there isn't anyone doing it, and it's not happening to anyone. This is not liberation from moment-to-moment recognition of life itself. This is liberation from the suppressive and depressive qualities of me, of mind. If we hit that point where we get to this recognition that we possess the freedom to cling or to not cling, to do or to not do, that everything is just happening on its own in some way, and we don't have to interfere with the process in any way, this is when we begin to really experience liberation and freedom. Freedom from our own thoughts, freedom from experience, freedom from clinging of every sort. Even to the thought that we will be liberated, we will be free, we will be bound. All of these concepts are what shatters. You see, we're not going to get there, wherever there is. Here. We're not going to get here through concepts. Through making decisions about anything. But paradoxically, when we're in the state of liberated freedom, decisions happen. Activity happens. Life happens. Everything is flowing. It's just free of me. It's free of mind. It's free of grasping and clinging. It's moving through its own nature, which is your nature, when there is no me or mine, grasping or clinging to any concept, thought, emotion, even the concepts and thoughts of liberation or freedom. The final frontier in this way of being or this work is just to know that everything is as it is. If you aren't reacting to things in the way that they are, the possibility that you can respond in a very heartfelt, loving, kind, and compassionate way is ever present. Because you are that. There's something else.
Oh,
I just saw you go way over here somewhere.
I don't know, nothing.
Okay. I thought something else was coming.
No, it's just what is.
So, we'll finish with this healing mantra once again. This is the mantra that you all were listening to as you came in, the first half hour. It's referred to as a healing mantra. It has, of course, levels of understanding, as so many things in Sanskrit do. And the first level of understanding, of course, is the healing of the body. For those of you who might be having any kind of physical difficulty. Healing of the mind, if you're having a mental difficulty. Both for yourself and for others. So if you bring anyone to mind while this mantra is playing, or you're using it, or someone is intoning it, this is helpful for them. on the physical, mental, and emotional level. But it also has a deeper meaning. And that deeper meaning is liberation from fear of dying or fear of death. And of course it's used in that circumstance. It's recited during the times when someone is passing, or you are passing in India. This helps to settle the mind and heart when there's actual physical passing going on of oneself or of another. At its deepest level, however, what this mantra is used for is to eliminate the fear of ego death. And so at its deepest level, it's used here as a way of preparing you for satsang by enabling you in a very natural and very holistic way to just keep letting go of the ego, because this recognition of liberation can often trigger the ego, because the ego knows its time is up and it doesn't like that, it reacts to it. And you'll hear stories often of people who have had moments of awakened recognition of who they are, and then their whole life just went to pot in the next couple of days after a big opening. And this can be said to be the response of the ego, or the response of conditioning to the recognition of truth or the recognition of self. And so this particular mantra is used in satsang here to enable you to just relax your own ego and let yourself die to who you think you are in order to live as truth. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardinam Urvarukamiva Bandinam Mrityor Mukshiyamamritawa Svaha Bhuva Bhu Om Sat Jung Hang Om. Om Shanti.